Okay, section 5.2, we're going to use perpendicular bisectors to solve problems. First off, we need to do some vocabulary. A segment, ray, line, or plane that is perpendicular to a segment at its midpoint is called a perpendicular bisector. So looking at the figure, we can see a point is equidistant from two figures if the point is the same distance from each figure. Okay, so we look at that diagram, we see that DE is a perpendicular of AC. First, it's perpendicular. B is the midpoint because AB and BC are the same length. So the theorem states that in a plane, if a point is on the perpendicular bisector, then it is equidistant from the endpoints of the segment. So that means that if CP is a perpendicular bisector of AB, then point C is going to be the same distance from both A and B. So that means CA would be equal to CB. Likewise, in the converse, if a point is equidistant from the endpoints of a segment, then it is on the perpendicular bisector of the segment. So we see that if D is equidistant from both A and B, so that means DA equals DB, then D lies on the perpendicular bisector of AB, or on line CP. Some extra vocabulary that I don't have in the notes that we need to just go over. Concurrency is 3 or more lines, rays, or segments that intersect at the same point. So in a triangle, the perpendicular bisectors, there would be 3 of them, are concurrent at a point that is equidistant from the vertices. That point is called the circumcenter, and you will need that for your project. Okay, in a triangle. Okay, so let's practice. We're going to find the length of AB. Find the length of AB. Well, I can see that BD is perpendicular to AC. It's at the midpoint. So these two must be the same distance, the same length. B must be the same distance from both A and C. So I can just put 2 So you solve for x and then you substitute it back into one of the two expressions. So again, I can see perpendicular, same distance, so these two. And then substitute it back into one of these. 18 plus 8 is 26. And BD is a perpendicular bisector, so both B and D must be the same distance from C and A, or I should say B must be the same distance from C and A, and D then must be the same distance from C and A. They're not all for the same length. So we have and I'll just substitute it into this one up here. 24 plus 11 is 35. Looking at some reasoning, we're going to tell whether or not we have enough information to conclude that C would be on the perpendicular bisector. So in the first one here, we're looking to see is, I can draw it straight, is C on that line, which would be perpendicular to AB? So no, it wouldn't, because I don't have, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it would be, because it is the same length, because CA equals CB. I have a point that is the same distance from both the endpoints, excuse me, of a segment. But in number 5, I have no indication that CA is equal to CB, nor do I have any perpendicular here. So, no. And then in number 6, since I know, and I'm going to create a point here, D. Since I know DA equals DB, and I do have perpendicular, C would also be on the perpendicular bisector. And you could also say that these two being perpendicular and through a midpoint. Using this diagram, we're going to find the values of x and y and find lengths. So the first thing I can do is I see that because, let's do some highlighting here, because I'm perpendicular here, and I have these two lengths here, these two lengths here, the same, then EG is a perpendicular bisector. So I can first go over here, I can do this, there are even marked congruent, find y. Okay, then that means that 9x minus 1 equals 7x plus 9. So I have both variables, so then it's just a matter of substituting in. So EF is 7x plus 9. So 7 times 5 plus 9 is 35 plus 9 is 44. DE is 9x minus 1, which better be 44, right? They're the same. Number 9 is FG, so 7 times y, which is 4, plus 8 is 36. 10 DG better be 36. 11 FH. FH can see is actually that whole, I'm going to make it that whole length. FD, so let's just clarify some things here. So this is this whole length. So when I go over here and do 3x plus 4y and get 15 plus 31, FH is going to be half of that. Which is going to be 15.5. And 12 is what we just did. And that's the end of the lesson.